story, the Erhu of Tanjung Kidurong. A bright, busy town. Once upon a time, in a bright, busy town called Tanjung Kidurong, it was right on the edge of a deep green jungle where something went really wrong. Tanjung Kidurong was famous for its giant silos filled with golden grain. It was a happy place where the sun always shone and the air smelled like salty sea breezes and sweet coconut cakes. A cockroach. But one Tuesday, Mrs. Hawa opened her cereal box and she found a pair of long teaching antennae in the cornflakes. Eek, she cried. There was the first one. By Wednesday, there were 10. By Friday, there were 10 million. The maniacs of cockroaches. The town was being taken over by cockroaches. They weren't just any bugs. They were kings of the scuttle. They had shiny coffee-colored shells that clicked when they walked. They had tickly legs. They could climb up walls, across ceilings, and right over the mayor's fancy leather shoes. Cockroaches are everywhere. The sound was the worst part. If you sat very still, you could hear it click-clack, click-clack, stitch all the time. It sounded like 1,000 tiny fingernails tapping on a wooden table. They were everywhere. They hid in the toaster. They napped in the library books. They even held races across the school gym floor. The town people tried everything possible. They used big broomsticks to sweep them out, but the cockroaches just climbed up the broomsticks. They used stinky sprays, but the cockroaches just held their breath and put on tiny imaginary gas masks. Mayor Tang. Mayor Tang, a man who wore very expensive silk suits and loved to hear himself talk, stood on a fountain in the middle of the town square. He had to stand on the fountain because the ground was moving. Literally, a carpet of brown bugs was flowing over the cobblestones like a living river. Citizens, the mayor shouted, waving his arms. Do not panic. I have a plan. But he didn't have a plan. He just had itchy ankles. A stranger with an Erhu. Suddenly the crowd went quiet. Walking through the gates of the town was the strangest person anyone had ever seen. He was dark-haired, tall and thin, and he wore a suit made of expensive hand-woven cotton. The cotton suit changed colors when he moved. Sometimes it looked like a leaf, and sometimes like a beetle's wing. On his head was a tall, pointed hat with bright hornbill feathers. In his hand, he held a simple erhu made of dark, polished wood. He walked right up to the fountain. His eyes were brown, bright and brown, and he had a mysterious little smile. He didn't say hello. He just looked at the mayor and held up the erhu. Ability to get rid of cockroaches. I can lead them away, the stranger said. His voice sounded like the wind blowing through dry grass. After a pause, he said, every single one, but my music is rare, and my time is precious. The mayor leaned down, saying, if you can get rid these leggy monsters out of my town, I'll give you anything. What is your price, Erhu Musician? The stranger looked at the crowd. He looked at the thousands of clicking scattering bugs. 2,000 Sarawak dollars, he said. The crowd gasped. 2,000, whispered a baker. That's enough to buy a mountain of flour. The high price. He's joking, laughed a tall man in the back. He's just a boy with a tool. The mayor's face turned red. He thought the price was far too high. But then a cockroach crawled into his pocket. He jumped high into the air with a shout, saying, "Fine, 2,000 Sarawak dollars." Just made them stop clicking. The magical effect, the Erhu musician noted. He stepped into the center of the square and started playing the Erhu. He didn't play a nursery rhyme. He didn't play a jaunty tune. He played a sound that was low and rumbly, like a purring cat, mixed with the sound of a rustling forest. He repeated the sounds, ngee-ngaw, 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 at different tempos repeatedly. The effect was magic. The cockroaches followed the Erhu musician. The cockroaches stopped every single one of them. The antennas stopped twitching. They all turned their tiny heads toward the musician. As he began to walk towards the town gates, playing that strange drumming song, the carpet of bugs began to move. They followed him. They poured out of the bakeries, shops, and houses. They tumbled out of the silos. They scurried down from the ceilings. A giant shimmering ribbon of brown bugs followed the man in the brown attire. He led them through the streets, past the schools, and straight out towards the dark, tangled jungle. A giant hollowed-out log. He led them to a giant hollowed-out log at the edge of the deep jungle. He played a loud, sharp note, "Yee!" and every single cockroach marched into the log, deeper and deeper into the jungle, where they could scuttle under leaves and stay away from cereal boxes forever. The Erhu musician stopped playing and walked back to the town. The streets were clean. The clicking sound was gone. The town was silent and wonderful. Asking for the reward, he went to the mayor's office. "The task is done," the musician said quietly. 2,000 Sarawak dollars, please. But mayor was a greedy man. Now the bugs were gone, but he didn't want to pay. He looked at the musician and scoffed. 2,000 Sarawak dollars for playing a toy. The mayor laughed. The crowd, seeing the mayor's move, began to jeer too, saying, "We could have chased them out with broomsticks eventually." The mayor said abruptly, "Here is $50. Take it and be lucky. I don't charge you for the sunshine." The rejection. The crowd cheered for the mayor. They pointed at the Erhu musician's strange clothes and laughed at his pointed hornbill feathers hat. "Go on, whistle, boy. Choo!" The Erhu musician didn't get angry. He didn't shout. He just looked at the mayor with those bright brown eyes. "A bargain is a bargain," he said. "And music has a way of balancing the scales." A different tune. He stepped back out into the street. The sun was beginning to set, turning the sky into a dusty orange. He held the Erhu in such a position once more and started playing. This time the tune was different. It was sweet like the smell of rain. It was light like a floating bubble. It was a kind of music that made you want to skip and jump. The children followed the music. Suddenly, the front doors of the houses began to creak open. The children of Tanjung Kidurong heard it first. They dropped their toys. They stopped their homework. With big smiles on their faces, they began to dance out of their homes. They followed the Erhu musician, laughing and holding hands. "Wait!" cried the mother. "Stop!" shouted the father, but the children couldn't hear them. They only heard the beautiful bubbly music. The Erhu musician led them through the gates, towards the soft glowing lights of the forest. The mayor ran to the gate, shouting for them to come back, but it was too late. The musician and the children disappeared into the green shadows of the jungle. Learning a hard lesson. The town was very quiet. There were no cockroaches, but there were no games of taps in the park either. The mayor sat in his office, looking at his gold coins, which felt very heavy and very cold. He had learned a hard lesson. Always keep your words and never scoff at a musician who can talk to the world with a song. Magic has the power. From that day on, the people of Tanjung Kidurong always left a small plate of crumbs and a tiny cup of water outside their doors at night, but just in case the cockroaches ever came back, and just in case a man in brown ever decided to bring the children home. The town comes alive once again many years later. Thank you.